Ever wonder if there's a better way to learn? A way to make information actually stick? Well, today, we're going to unlock the science behind studying smarter, not just harder.
I mean, we've all been there, right? You spend a whole night cramming, you reread your notes until your eyes glaze over, you feel like you've totally got it. But then, come test day, poof, it's just gone. It's an incredibly common frustration, and it turns out there's a real scientific reason for it.
And that reason, it boils down to this huge distinction our brains get wrong all the time: the difference between performance and learning. See, performance is what you can do right now, in this moment. It feels easy, it feels familiar, but learning is what actually sticks. It's the real, durable knowledge you can still use tomorrow or next week or even next year. So here's the crazy part. Our brains constantly trick us. What feels productive is often just building a memory that's going to vanish by morning. This brings us to a huge idea in cognitive science, the performance versus learning illusion. Let's dig into why we get fooled so easily. So, when you reread a chapter, the words start to look familiar. Your brain processes them a little faster, and that fluency, that ease, it feels great. We mistake that feeling for mastery. But what's really happening is just this low-level recognition. We're recognizing the material, not truly understanding it or locking it away for the long haul.
So what's going on under the hood that causes this illusion? Well, it all comes down to a fundamental limit, a kind of mental bottleneck that every single one of us has.
It's called cognitive load. The easiest way to think about it is like this. Imagine your working memory. The part of your brain juggling what you're thinking about right now is a small workbench. You can only hold a few things on it at once. Cognitive load is just the total amount of mental effort that workbench is trying to handle.
Now, as you can see here, not all that effort is created equal. Some of it is just the topic being hard. That's the intrinsic load. But a lot of it is what's called extraneous load. Think of that as all the useless mental clutter from confusing slides or a noisy room. The real secret to learning is to clear all that junk off your workbench so you have more space for the good stuff, the germane load. That's the deep, focused work that actually builds lasting knowledge.
And this leads us to a really counterintuitive but super powerful idea. The goal isn't to make learning as easy as possible. Actually, it's kind of the opposite. It's about introducing the right kind of challenges.
This quote from researchers Elizabeth and Robert Bjork it perfectly captures the paradox. The study methods that feel the easiest, the ones that show the quickest results, like rereading your notes over and over, they're often the absolute worst for creating knowledge that actually lasts.
These challenges have a name: desirable difficulties. They are productive struggles. It's like going to the gym. If a weight is too easy to lift, you're not building any muscle. These difficulties force your brain to work harder, to engage in that good, germane cognitive load. And it's that deeper processing that forges stronger, more flexible connections in your brain. It feels harder, for sure, but that's how you know it's working.
Okay, so this is all great in theory, but how do we actually do it? Let's build a practical toolkit based on these powerful ideas.
First up, instead of massing your practice, the classic all-night cram session, try spacing it out. Studying a topic for an hour today, another hour in a couple of days, and then again next week is way more effective than one 3-hour marathon. Why? Because spacing forces your brain to work a little to recall the information, and that effort is what strengthens the memory each time.
Next, let's talk about interleaving. This means instead of practicing one skill at a time, like AAA, then BBB, you mix them all up, ABC, ABC. It feels way harder. It feels messy because your brain can't just go on autopilot. It's forced to constantly figure out which strategy to use, which, hey, is exactly what you have to do on a real test or out in the real world.
And finally, this one is a big one. Ditch passive rereading and start using active retrieval. The simple act of pulling information out of your memory is one of the most powerful learning tools you have. It's called the testing effect. Every single time you force yourself to answer a question from memory, no peeking, you are not just checking what you know, you are fundamentally strengthening that memory.
So if these methods are so much better, why don't we all use them? Well, let's look at some fascinating data from a study on interleaving. Researchers asked people which method they thought was better for their learning. And this just perfectly illustrates that illusion we talked about. A whopping 80% of people were totally convinced that blocked practice, the easier but way less effective method, was better. But here's the payoff. When they looked at the actual test performance, the results were flipped completely upside down.
The group that used interleaving, the method that felt harder, outperformed the other group by a factor of 2. This is some of the best proof we have that our intuitions about what works for learning are often dead wrong.
So what's the reward for all this productive struggle? I mean, it's more than just getting a better grade. It's about achieving something much deeper, genuine insight.
When you use these strategies, when you manage your cognitive load, and you embrace these desirable difficulties, you create the perfect conditions for those incredible aha moments. You know that sudden flash of understanding where everything just clicks into place? That's not magic. That's the result of your brain finally making the deep connections that these more challenging methods force it to build.
And really, this isn't just about studying for a class. As the Bjorks put it, in a world that is changing faster than ever, learning how to learn is the ultimate survival tool. Understanding these principles gives you control over your own development for your whole life.
So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. Which one of these strategies are you going to try first? Are you going to space out your practice, mix things up with interleaving, or start quizzing yourself more? The journey to becoming a truly effective learner starts with just one deliberate step.